In 1948, an American geographer walked across a flat grey terrace north of Lima and marked it as natural hills. The wind had stripped the ground bare, and no pottery glittered on the surface. He was standing on a city that held 6 pyramids. 6 pyramids faced a vast plaza on the Supe, 23 kilometers from the Pacific. The largest rose 28 meters high, and its base covered 160 by 150 meters. 2 sunken circular courts lay nearby, and plastered staircases led to walls still holding red and yellow. The tight center covered 65 hectares, and the protected boundary now covers 626. It was already 46 centuries old. Every large mound had been built while Giza rose in Egypt, yet the map showed nothing because of what was not there. No pottery at all. Pottery breaks, and that is why archaeologists trust it. A jar shatters and the pieces survive for thousands of years in dry desert ground. Find painted pieces and you have a date to anchor a layer. The answer feels obvious. The site is poor and likely recent, so why spend months digging empty ground? That rule worked across the Andes for a century, and it erased the Supe from textbooks. German archaeologist Max Uhle saw the mounds in 1905, logged them and left them alone. When Kosok flew over the valley in 1948, he called the terraces ancient and almost no one believed him. The scale looked impossible without pottery. Architect Carlos Williams mapped the same mounds in 1975 and still listed them as late. Wind uncovered walls and buried them again while students learned that the Andes built big only late, after pottery and maize. The missing pottery should have been the clue that the site was older than pottery itself. Ruth Shady had walked the Supe as a student and never forgot the scale. In 1994, she returned with tapes and stakes to map what others had sketched and abandoned. The hills were not natural because their edges aligned where nature makes curves. Mounds squared to each other, and plazas had been leveled by hand across the terrace. The tight center covers 65 hectares of pyramids, courts and houses packed together. The sacred boundary now covers 626 hectares, more than 1,500 acres. 3,000 people lived there. She recorded 6 large pyramids, each facing the main plaza with a ramp and formal staircase. Between them lay 2 sunken circular courts, one cutting 8 meters deep into the fill. Houses showed clear inequality. Some had plastered benches and storage pits. Others were tight one-room rows. The rich lived high near the temples while workers lived below, near the fields. She opened trenches at the foot of Pyramid Maya, 150 meters long, 110 meters wide, rising 28 meters above the plaza. Plaster still showed red and yellow. She found reeds woven into nets and bagged every fiber. The nets were not scraps, but bags woven from reeds and raw cotton cord and filled with stone. The stone was not local and came from a quarry more than 1.5 miles away. Workers carried the bags on their backs and laid them behind walls and under floors. Some bags weighed more than 1,000 pounds, and archaeologists counted hundreds inside Pyramid Maya alone. The coast had a name: Shikras. Pick one up in the mind and feel how the rocks shift inside the weave. That shift is the point. The Supe sits on one of the most seismic coasts in the world, and a stiff platform cracks when the ground shakes. A platform on Shikras rolls a little and spreads the shock across the fill. Engineers in Lima built a model on a shaking table, and the Shikra base moved like a modern base isolator. Fibers stretched, stones resettled, and nothing collapsed. That is why the pyramids stand after 46 centuries on desert terraces. Their builders buried flexibility at the bottom instead of rigidity. They had no pottery to date, but the bags themselves held carbon, and carbon holds a clock. The clock ran in a lab where plant fibers keep a record of carbon. While reeds grow, they trap carbon, and when they die, the clock starts. In 1999, Shady sent reed and cotton samples for radiocarbon dating, and results reached her in 2000. She sent more to be sure, including gourds and wood posts and bast fibers from sealed fill. Every sample pointed to the same span, even from different courts. Science published the dates on 27 April 2001, with Shady Solis and colleagues as authors. Radiocarbon places monumental architecture at Caral from 2627 BC calibrated is 4090 before present to 3640 before present in lab years. The older end lands squarely beside Khufu at Giza, often placed around 2580 to 2560 BC. 2 pyramid cultures built at once with no contact and no shared plan. Caral rose 23 kilometers from the Pacific, with no pottery and no maize in its fields. Middens held squash, beans, sweet potato, guava, lucuma, piquet and cotton. Gossypium barbadense with fishbone. Cotton made nets, nets caught fish and fish fed builders. The first city on this continent was not a copy, and it was older than pottery by 1,000 years. That paper forced textbooks to move. With a date, the economy comes into focus. The Supe cuts a green line through desert, and canals left its bank to feed terrace fields. One early canal still waters modern farms in the same place today. Fields grew cotton, and cotton was wealth because it became nets and line. Down on the coast, anchoveta and sardines schooled thick. Ingroelis ringins and sardinops sagax, and fishermen dried them for inland trade. Inland farmers sent cotton nets and gourds for floats and fruit to the shore. House middens hold both cotton seeds and fishbone in the same ash. That exchange built the city. Upper Caral holds big complexes and sunken courts, while lower holds dense housing and smaller platforms. Some houses have plastered benches and storage pits. Others are tight one-room rows. Inequality lived beside cooperation. Music lived at the center. Inside the temple of the amphitheater, excavators lifted 32 tubular flutes, cut from condor and pelican bone. 7 notes each and 37 cornets of deer and llama bone lay nearby, with paint still on the surface. No walls ringed the city, and no weapons lay in any trench. No battlements and no bodies with battle trauma have been found. That absence is easy to overread. No weapons found does not mean no violence at all. 25 years of trenches have found no fortifications and no mutilated bodies at Caral itself. Yet 25 kilometers toward the sea, the sister site of Espero tells a harder story. At the river mouth, Espero fished the same water and traded with the inland city. There, archaeologists found burials placed under temple walls. They included 2 children in clay at a platform base and a young man with no offerings except arranged hair. Other nearby graves hold infants in ritual positions. The coast kept rites that included child sacrifice, even as Caral showed no such graves. The same valley held different practices. The claim from 2001 needs the same care. Caral was called the oldest city in the Americas, and since then other Norte Chico sites have returned earlier dates. Banduria and Sechin Bajo now push centuries before Caral and Huaricunga, even earlier in places. The title moves with each lab. What stays is this: Caral is the grandest early city we can walk today. It is the largest and best preserved, where courts, pyramids, houses and canals appear together at full scale. Think of it as the capital of a valley of many towns, not the single origin of urban life. Around 2000 BC, the city was closed. Not burned, not sacked, but filled. Workers carried in clean rubble and laid fresh bags of stone, then spread new floors over old temples. Staircases vanished under fill and hearths were capped while plazas were leveled and sealed. The valley emptied without mass graves to mark a war. Khors and dunes point to drought, a long arid pulse near 2200 to 1800 BC. That pulse is the 4.2 kiloyear event that stressed the Old Kingdom in Egypt and Akkadian cities in Mesopotamia. In the Supe, springs thinned and the river ran lower while dunes moved and lower fields failed. People did not vanish in place. They moved to higher ground. 10 kilometers east and 600 meters higher, springs still ran and fog watered the slopes. There they laid the same plan on a fresh terrace, 18 structures with the same courts and platforms around a plaza. The stone was fresh and the pattern was familiar, waiting 8 years of digging before gates opened. The new terrace is Penico, dated to 1800 to 1500 BC, 300 to 500 years after Caral's peak. Work began there in 2017 and ran 8 years before the ministry opened it. In July 2025, conch trumpets sounded and guides walked visitors past the same sunken circles and pyramid stairs that define Caral. It is smaller and higher and freshly exposed. It is an open dig, not a finished story. Keep looking at the grey bumps that still wait in haze at blue hour. More still waits.